Hey, happy Sunday morning, everybody. So this video is going to deal with the topic of MAGA cult members now trying to do a lot of whataboutism, and in any post that you see below stories of fascist MAGA cultists being arrested by the FBI for the Capitol riots, they're showing up and saying, "Oh, well, what about BLM, Antifa last summer? Blah blah blah." You know, it's like a weird broken record with them, just like Antifa, blah 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 blah. So yeah, I mean, there's a number of reasons why doing this turn of whataboutism is just completely ridiculous. So the first of all, it's different in scope. You may not like to hear this, but raiding the Capitol, trying to interrupt a constitutional process just because you didn't like the results of the election, is a lot different than just spray painting "fuck the police" on the side of the local Arby's. It's just a completely different thing, and of course, it's going to be getting a lot more attention than all the individual acts that occurred during any rioting that happened last summer during the Black Lives Matter protests. Another thing is, I mean, people were arrested all through the riots. The Trump supporters are saying that, oh, this is unfair that they're arresting so many Trump supporters. They just let BLM, Antifa people get away with everything. They didn't. There was all kinds of arrests. Some of them ridiculous and got a lot of, people on the left were making fun of the people. These lawyers in New York barely tried to hide who they were as they drove by an empty police car and threw a Molotov cocktail at it. And they're in a lot of fucking trouble. They got a lot of shit because it's a dumb act. And everybody realizes it. Another thing, the doofuses at the Capitol were acting like they were filming the season finale of some bizarre MAGA cult QAnon reality TV show, and in a lot of ways that's what was going on in their heads. They're all wrapped up in this whole basically reality show of Donald Trump, and I don't think the reality of what they were doing, storming into the Capitol, making like selfies and taking videotapes of themselves, really sank in. The nature of what they were doing, they thought it was like a TV show and almost like fake. There's almost like a dissociative aspect on their parts, I think, that was going on. And you didn't see that happen, of course, over the summer. There wasn't, people doing things and like making videos like that. There were videos and that caught a lot of bad behavior, but it wasn't the same goofiness and the anonymity and just the downright simple fact that there was no mask wearing happening when the people were doing it. Any riots that were happening over the summer, the people participating were often wearing masks. Not even so much because of COVID, but because of knowing that they're engaging in illegal activities that could be videotaped. They were wearing masks to cover their faces. The doofuses at the Capitol the other week were just, they were literally not wearing masks because they thought that was an act of defiance against, the commie liberals who want people to wear masks. And the final thing, or maybe not the final thing, but the final thing I'm going to talk about is there's a big difference between a bunch of people being mad at an election and ganging up and storming the Capitol, specifically a specific place, targeting it while it's doing official business and making threats against people inside it. That's a lot different than over last summer. It was mostly peaceful protests with also riots that went on often, by the way, that were triggered by police behavior. Police would start the violent activity. There's also all kinds of evidence that outside agitators were coming in order to create chaos at the protests. But the general gist of it is people gathering to violently overthrow the results of an election versus people who are protesting for civil rights. Police abuse against citizens. And maybe you, Trump supporters, are incapable of looking at those two things and seeing why one is just. In fact, you're backwards. You think the wrong one is completely justified. But most people have a basic understanding that when people are out protesting for civil rights, and things sometimes will turn ugly in those protests, it's a world of difference from a bunch of goons being mad about an election because the con artist, game show host, reality TV star lost, and then making threats to overthrow the orderly process of the government in recognizing that loss. You people live in your own little fantasy land, but the vast majority of people, especially the vast majority of people in the world, but the vast majority of people, normal people, even people who otherwise might more so agree with some of you, they don't live in your fantasy land. They don't live in MAGA cult bullshit fantasy world. And it's going to become more and more apparent to you guys over the next few years that's the case. So you should really think about wising the fuck up now.